I'm Sydney Offutt, and I was 34 the day I learned my mother could turn my sister's entire life into something you manage instead of something you live. Cassie was 19. There was a photograph, and there was talk. And in Marlin Creek, talk doesn't walk, it runs. By the time it slows down enough to look like truth, it's already too late. My mother called it handling it. What she meant was simple. Cassie was going to be contained before the town decided what she was. So they found her a husband, a good family, a familiar name, a quiet arrangement designed to erase noise. And Cassie? Cassie didn't even get the dignity of refusing. She had gone so quiet inside that house that even her silence was treated like agreement. I didn't raise my voice when it started falling apart. I asked one question at a lunch table, and I set a folded piece of paper down in front of a room full of people who thought they were attending a celebration. That was enough. The story begins long before that table. I live 3 hours away now, in Charleston, in a one-bedroom apartment that belongs only to me. I work as a paralegal in family law. My days are built inside other people's endings, divorce filings, custody fights, annulments, contracts signed by people who were too afraid to read what they were agreeing to. I put myself through school working nights at a motor lodge, and I was the first Offutt to leave Marlin Creek without being carried out in pieces. My family is proud of that, in the way people are proud of a scar they don't want to explain. They mention it when it benefits them. Then they change the subject. I called home every Sunday at 6 for 11 years, not because the calls were warm, because Cassie existed on the other end of that number, and I had decided a long time ago that silence was a kind of debt I was still paying. She was 4 when I left. I told myself she would be fine. That's what people like me do when we leave. We tell ourselves things so we can keep going. My mother ran that house like a courthouse clerk. Everything had rules. Everything had appearances. My father ran the feed and hardware store on Main Street, the family name painted in gold across the window like it meant something permanent. Offutt. A name that functioned like currency in that town, and like a warning. So when my mother called me at 11:07 on a Tuesday night, I already knew something had broken. She never called after 9. Her voice didn't even warm up before she said it. "There's talk about your sister." No greeting, no softness, just tension pulled tight enough to snap. "What kind of talk?" I asked. "It doesn't matter what's true," she said. "It matters what people think they saw." That was the first crack. Cassie hadn't done anything wrong. Not really. She had driven a friend home from a party, helped her upstairs because she was sick and shaking, stayed until she was safe, and left around 2 in the morning. That was the whole thing. But someone saw her leave the building. And in Marlin Creek, a girl leaving a building at the wrong hour becomes a story people can shape however they want. By the time it reached my mother's kitchen, Cassie had already been convicted of something unnamed, but unforgivable, and my mother's solution had already formed. Control the story, or better yet, replace it. When I came home that weekend, I knew before I even reached the ridge that something had shifted. The town doesn't change. It just starts looking at you differently when it thinks it knows something about you. At the gas station, a man I grew up knowing looked at me too long, then looked away too fast. That's how rumor behaves here. It makes eye contact, then pretends it didn't. By the time I got to the house, my father's truck wasn't at the store. That alone told me how serious it was. My father never left the store unless something threatened the name on the window. I got the truth in pieces. Cassie had helped a drunk friend up to an apartment. Someone saw a girl leaving a young man's building. That young man was not even involved. But none of that mattered anymore, because in Marlin Creek, truth is not what survives. Perception does, and perception had already decided Cassie was damaged. My mother didn't even argue when I said I was coming. She just told me to wear something nice. "We're having guests." That sentence carried more weight than anything else. Guests meant performance. Performance meant control. When I walked into the house, the smell hit me first. Lemon oil, heavy polish. the scent of a room that only existed when judgment was about to be delivered. Cassie was 19, sitting at the edge of her bed when I found her. She was twisting a ring around her finger. It was too big. It slipped every time she moved her hand. So she kept turning it again and again, like she could stabilize it through repetition. "That's from them," she said softly when I looked at it. "They gave it to you?" She nodded. Before she was asked anything, that was the moment I understood what this really was. Not an engagement, a transfer. Downstairs, my mother said it out loud like she was announcing whether Cassie was going to be engaged to a good young man from a good family. My father called it protection, a way to settle things, a way to make the talk stop. But what they meant was simpler. A ring was cheaper than a reputation, and Cassie was the cost. At dinner, the Vance family arrived. Mary Beth Vance moved through our home like she was evaluating an asset. Her son Garrett barely looked at Cassie. When he did, it was the same look someone gives a thing they already expect to own. No one asked Cassie a single question that mattered, not one, and she said nothing. She just turned that ring around and around under the table like she was trying to wear down time itself. That night, I sat in my old room and did what I always do when emotion stops being useful. I thought like a paralegal, and I found the first real crack. Marriage is not emotion in the eyes of the law. It is contract, and contracts require consent. Free consent. Not silence, not fear, not pressure dressed up as tradition. Consent. The word felt like a door I hadn't noticed before. The next day I confirmed it with Ruth, my supervisor. 30 years in family law, and she didn't waste a single word. "If it's duress," she said, "it's voidable," which meant simple things. It would stand only if no one challenged it. And Cassie would have the right to challenge it the moment she was free enough to breathe without being watched. So this wasn't a rescue. It was exposure. The system only worked if nobody named it. So I stopped trying to fight the people and started preparing the room. I pulled a marriage license form from the county clerk's office. Plain paper. Ordinary language. Both parties must appear in person. Both must sign. No exceptions. No proxies. No substitutions. Just two people standing in front of witnesses, confirming they are not being forced. I folded that paper and kept it with me like a quiet certainty. Then I went to see Pastor Dale. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just asked what he would do if he believed a bride might not be there by choice. He didn't answer quickly. That told me everything. He was not blind, just careful. Careful men can't support obvious force once it is named in front of them. That was enough. By the time the lunch was set, everything was already in place. Cassie was shrinking by the day. Not physically. Something quieter. Like she was learning how to take up less space so she wouldn't be noticed by the thing deciding her future. And then, the morning of the lunch, I heard Garrett on the porch. He was laughing, saying it didn't matter if Cassie was nervous. "She'll come around," he said. They always do. Like she was something that had to be trained. That was the moment something in me went completely still. Not angry. Clear. At the church hall, everything looked like celebration. Polished tables, lemon scent, good china, smiling neighbors, and my sister sitting at the center of it like a signed document no one had read aloud. My father stood to speak. My mother believed she had already won. Mary Beth Vance looked like she had closed a deal, and Cassie looked like she was trying to disappear inside her own chair. Then my father asked her to stand and thank the family. She stood, and nothing came out. The silence stretched too long to pretend it was normal. That's when I stood up. Not fast, not dramatic, just stood, and the room followed me. "I have one question," I said. I placed the folded clerk's form on the table. No theatrics, just truth in paper form. And I explained it. Marriage requires free consent, not pressure, not reputation management, not fear. Free consent. And if that consent is missing, then what they were building wasn't permanent. It was vulnerable. To law, to court, to reality. I watched Mary Beth Vance understand it first. Not emotionally, logically. And that was enough. Because she understood something my parents didn't want to admit. A contract that can be undone is not a safe investment. And a marriage that might be challenged in court is not protection. It is exposure. She stood. She ended it in one sentence. No ceremony, no argument, just withdrawal. And in that moment, the entire structure collapsed without a sound. My mother exploded afterward, not because she was surprised, because she had been seen. And being seen was the one thing she had spent her whole life preventing. But I didn't match her volume. I didn't need to. I told her quietly what people would say, that she tried to trade her daughter to preserve a name, and for the first time she had no reply. Not because she agreed, not because there was nothing left to defend it with. Cassie stepped forward then, slowly, shaking, and she took off the ring. The sound it made when it hit the table was small, but it carried through the entire room like something finally breaking in the right place. "I never said yes," she said. Her voice cracked once, then held, "I want my life." And that was it. No negotiation survives that sentence. Pastor Dale refused to proceed. The room emptied itself of certainty, and the arrangement ended right there, before it could ever become real. Outside, the air felt different, like something heavy had finally been removed from it. Cassie leaned against me in the parking lot and laughed through tears like she couldn't decide which emotion was correct. "I didn't know I was allowed," she said. "You always were," I told her. "They just never let you hear it." The fallout came slowly. My father lost his standing in town, not because of rumor, because people had witnessed choice being denied in real time. That is something you cannot reframe. My mother stayed quiet for a long time after. Then she told me she had once been 19 too, and that fear had been the only language anyone ever used to protect her. So she learned to speak it fluently. I understood her, but understanding is not the same as acceptance. Cassie came back to Charleston with me. She started nursing school. She learns how to take care of people now in a way that doesn't require her to disappear. We still call home on Sundays. But now there is something new in the rules of that house. A single condition. No is a complete sentence. And it will be treated like one. Because I learned something that day at that table. A name is not a family, control is not love, and consent is not the enemy of belonging. It is the proof that it exists at all.